Första, tack så mycket för att ni är här. Jag är student på Georgetown och jag tar min examen i maj.
Jag talar i mikrofonen.
Med?
Ja.
Okej. När hade ni som... Okej. Jag måste prata engelska nu.
That's fine.
So how many of you grew up in the US but spoke Swedish at home? No one? Okay. How many of you have children? Okay. And how many of you had difficulties or trouble getting your kids to speak Swedish with you? Yeah. It's kind of universal. So these are the questions that were motivating my thesis and what I came to Georgetown to study. And in the field of in the field of applied linguistics, Swedish would be referred to as a heritage language, in that it is a language that is only spoken in the home with the heritage of the person, and then the community language is the one that they would use in school or with anyone outside of the home or the wider community of the home. So, and the last thing that I was investigating was home language policies, which is the term for the official or unofficial rules that a household will put in place on what language they're going to use and with whom. And so my thesis was focused on how these policies affected the children's proficiency in Swedish. My first research question was, as I said before, how do the different types of policies affect the proficiency of the children in the home? But my second question, and the one I was most interested in, was how does which language the children use with their siblings affect their proficiency as well? Because I had this hypothesis that it wasn't just enough to speak Swedish with your parents, it also matters if you speak it with your siblings too. So what we do know and what we don't know about heritage languages is we do know that there is such a thing as a receptive bilingual versus a productive bilingual. So if someone is a receptive bilingual, it means they only understand another language, but they might have a lot of difficulty speaking it back. I know that well. And then the last one is your productive bilinguals. That's what you normally would think of as someone who both understands and speaks two languages or more than two languages. And then another thing we do know is that supporting literacy and reading in the heritage language does help with all of the children's languages, which is why I went to the Svenska skolan in Falls Church for my participants. But what we don't know quite yet is the extent to which their interactions with their siblings affects their proficiency. And the field is still developing extensive and concrete actions parents can take to help their children speak the language that they want them to be speaking and to fight against the dominance of English, especially in the US. And so my design for my research had three parts. I first had a language use questionnaire for the child participants, where I asked them to rate on a scale how often they spoke Swedish and in which context. So I asked them about how much they used in school, how much they used at home, how much they used with their siblings. I had different scenarios, such as if your parent asks you something in Swedish, how likely are you to answer in Swedish, and things like that. And then for the parents' use and attitudes questionnaire, I was asking questions about how much Swedish was visible in the home, like books or calendars, films, as well as emotions about how does it feel if your child doesn't speak back to you in Swedish, or how much do you want them to speak in Swedish to you? And then the last thing that I did to correlate these two questionnaires was a proficiency exam that I developed myself. So this is a closed test. I didn't know what this was before I started at Georgetown, and I would have never found out what it was if I had not gone to Georgetown, so I'm very grateful that I was able to learn about this because it's a shortcut proficiency measure for general language ability, and in it, every other word, the second half is deleted. And so you go through and try to read and fill it out, and it's deceptively simple, but also quite complicated sometimes too. And it was developed again at the Assessment and Evaluation Language Resource Center at Georgetown, which I have been working for and working with for the past, ever since my first semester at Georgetown. So I'm very grateful to have been there, because then I learned about this, and it's really cool. So in sum, what I was able to get from my results was that my hypothesis was onto something when I was wondering that the more Swedish the children spoke with their siblings, the better they scored on that proficiency exam. So therefore, it's not just how much Swedish they're speaking with their parents, it matters how much they're speaking with their siblings as well. And parents can encourage using Swedish in the home by encouraging them to use it with each other and not just with themselves. I included this very last quote at the end because I think it sums up the bilingual kid experience pretty well, where du kan aldrig förstå ett språk till du förstår om minst de två. Så, ja. Tack så mycket till Jenny om Svenska skolan, SWEA, ni, min handlare Dr. Lourdes Ortega och min mamma. Tack. Tack för det sköna så rosa stipendium. Tack.